The man with 100 human skeletons. The dark market for human bones. Imagine discovering that your loved one's grave has been opened. Not vandalized, not robbed for jewelry, opened. And when investigators look inside, the body is missing. Not just one grave, dozens. And somewhere nearby, police eventually discover a man casually living with over 100 human skeletons inside his house. Shelves filled with skulls, bones stacked like collectibles, 9 corpses hidden in a warehouse. And somehow the most disturbing part of the entire story is that neighbors described him as completely normal, friendly, helpful, quiet. The kind of guy you would never suspect. I think that's what truly unsettles people about cases like this. Not just the crime itself, but the realization that some of the darkest people don't look dark. They look ordinary. Today we're talking about one of the strangest and most disturbing criminal investigations of 2026. The case of Jonathan Gerlach, a 34-year-old man arrested after police discovered an underground operation involving grave robbing, human skeleton trafficking, and a market for human remains that most people didn't even know existed. And trust me, the deeper this story goes, the more uncomfortable it becomes. The cemetery where everything started. The story begins at Mount Moriah Cemetery in Yeadon, Pennsylvania, a massive historic cemetery containing more than 150,000 graves. Some of the graves date all the way back to the American Revolutionary War. Cemeteries like this carry a strange emotional weight. They're quiet, sacred. Frozen in time, they exist so families can believe their loved ones are finally at peace. Which is why what started happening there felt especially horrifying. In late 2025, police began receiving reports of graves being disturbed. At first, investigators assumed it was typical grave robbery. People stealing rings, necklaces, valuables buried with wealthy families. As disturbing as that already sounds, at least it made logical sense. But then investigators realized something worse was happening. The bones themselves were disappearing, entire skeletons, skulls and human remains. And suddenly this stopped looking like simple theft. It started looking ritualistic, obsessive, almost impossible to understand. The first clue. The first official report came on November 7th, 2025. A family visited a relative's grave and discovered it had been broken open. Imagine that moment. You arrive expecting flowers and silence. Instead, you find dirt disturbed, the grave violated. And lying near the scene was something strangely ordinary. A flathead screwdriver, the word Brian was engraved into the handle. Investigators recovered fingerprints from it. At the time, they had no idea how important those fingerprints would become. Then the robberies continued, almost daily. And what really frightened investigators was that the targets became random. Not just wealthy graves, not graves containing jewelry, ordinary people, unknown people, which suggested the thief didn't care about valuables anymore. He wanted the bodies. That realization changed the entire psychological tone of the investigation. Because stealing objects is one thing, stealing human remains feels deeply unnatural. It violates something ancient inside people. Respect for the dead exists in almost every culture on Earth. So when someone breaks that boundary repeatedly, society reacts with a very specific kind of fear. Not just disgust, desecration. The Monster Energy can. Then investigators found another clue. A discarded Monster Energy drink can near one of the crime scenes. And somehow that tiny detail makes this case feel even stranger. Because serial criminals in movies are always portrayed as hyper-intelligent masterminds. But real investigations are often solved through unbelievably ordinary mistakes. Fingerprints from a drink can, a dropped tool, a GPS signal. The fingerprints on the can matched the screwdriver. Now police knew the same person was responsible for all the break-ins. And by December 2025, there were already 26 reported grave robberies. The local community became terrified. Families started checking graves constantly. People worried their relatives would be next. The fear wasn't only about theft. It was the idea that someone was wandering through cemeteries at night, treating human remains like merchandise. That thought disturbed people on a primal level. The dinner party discovery. Then came the moment that completely blew the case open. And this part sounds almost unreal. A friend of Jonathan's cousin contacted police. Why? Because the cousin had visited Jonathan's house for dinner. At some point during the evening, he went downstairs to the basement to grab wine. Instead, he found a half-decomposed corpse hanging there. Just hanging. Imagine the psychological shock of that moment. Your brain probably wouldn't even process it immediately, because normal people are not mentally prepared to encounter something like that inside an ordinary suburban home. According to reports, the cousin became so terrified that he pretended not to notice anything. He finished dinner, acted normal, left the house, and only later told a friend, who eventually contacted authorities. That reaction feels very human. People always think they'd scream or confront someone in situations like this. But fear often makes people freeze, pretend, survive the moment first. The Facebook group. When investigators searched Jonathan's online activity, the story became even darker. Because apparently, there was a market for this. Not hidden deep web forums, not encrypted secret networks, Facebook groups, openly. One group was literally called Human Bone and Skull Buy and Sell Group. No code words, no subtlety, just direct buying and selling of human remains. And Jonathan wasn't hiding. His social media reportedly contained photos of skulls and bones displayed almost like artwork. Even more disturbing? People were leaving positive reviews, thanking him for purchases, talking about bone quality, making requests like this was some niche online marketplace. And I think what people miss here is how the internet changes human behavior. The internet normalizes things through repetition. The more people gather around a disturbing interest, the more normal it starts feeling inside that community. That's why some online spaces become psychologically dangerous. People stop asking, should this exist? And instead start asking, how much does it cost? The Halloween visit. Police eventually tracked Jonathan's phone GPS, and the data was chilling. Every reported grave robbery lined up with his location. On Halloween night 2025, Jonathan reportedly spent from 10:35 p.m. until 8:50 a.m. inside the cemetery. Think about that. While most people were at parties, watching horror movies, or spending time with friends, this man spent the entire night among graves. Digging, searching, removing human remains. And somehow one detail hit people especially hard. He allegedly spent Christmas Eve robbing graves too. There's something psychologically haunting about that. Because holidays usually symbolize family, warmth, tradition. Meanwhile, this guy was alone in a cemetery stealing skeletons. It almost sounds less like greed and more like obsession. The arrest. January 6, 2026, police decide to wait for Jonathan at Mount Moriah Cemetery. Investigators watch as he arrives carrying a large bag. Then they allegedly witness him breaking into another grave, removing bones, loading them into his car. When officers finally arrest him, the bag reportedly contains 3 skulls and piles of human bones. And his car? Human remains scattered casually inside, like groceries. That detail deeply disturbed investigators because it suggested complete emotional detachment. Most people experience intense discomfort around death. But Jonathan allegedly handled human remains like ordinary objects. And that's psychologically fascinating, because some criminals don't just ignore moral boundaries. They stop emotionally recognizing those boundaries altogether. The House of Skeletons. Then police searched Jonathan's home and rented warehouse. And what they discovered shocked even experienced investigators. Shelves lined with skulls, stacks of bones, human remains arranged almost like decorations. More than 100 skeletons and skulls. Not 30, not a handful. Over 100. And in the warehouse, investigators reportedly discovered 9 intact corpses. Some remains were believed to be over 200 years old. Imagine being the officers walking into that scene. The smell. The silence. The realization that each skull once belonged to a real person with a family, a name, a life. And what's interesting is that cases involving human remains trigger a different kind of public fear than ordinary crimes, because they force people to confront mortality directly. Most people spend their entire lives psychologically avoiding thoughts about death. Then suddenly a case like this appears and reminds everyone. The body is fragile, temporary, physical. That discomfort hits deep. The normal guy problem. But the part that truly unsettled people. Jonathan seemed normal. Neighbors described him as polite, friendly, helpful. One neighbor said he even helped stop a house fire once. Friends from his old heavy metal band described him as empathetic and kind. The only strange thing neighbors noticed was an unusual amount of flies around his property. And even then, people just assumed he was messy. I think this is the psychological trap people constantly fall into. We expect dangerous people to look dangerous. We imagine monsters as obviously broken, aggressive, socially isolated. But real life rarely works that way. Some of history's darkest criminals blended into society perfectly. That's why stories like this become so haunting. Because they challenge our confidence in our ability to judge people. If someone capable of grave robbing and selling skeletons can still appear friendly and normal, then what else are people hiding? The buyers. And somehow the buyers may be even more disturbing, because Jonathan wasn't collecting all these remains for himself. He had customers. Investigators reportedly uncovered messages from buyers making highly specific requests. One allegedly asked for child mummy remains specifically. Not adult remains, children. That detail horrified people online, because suddenly the story expanded beyond one disturbed individual. Now it became evidence of an entire underground market. Collectors, obsessives, people treating human remains like rare merchandise. And what's chilling is that many of these people probably appear completely ordinary too. They go to work, talk to neighbors, post normal photos online. Meanwhile, privately participating in something most society would consider deeply disturbing. That duality is what makes true crime so psychologically addictive. It forces people to confront the gap between appearance and reality. The nightmare investigators now face. Now investigators face an almost impossible task: identifying every bone, matching remains correctly, returning them to families. Think about how horrifyingly complicated that process is. Hundreds of mixed remains, different graves, different cemeteries, different time periods, DNA testing, forensic reconstruction, historical records. And the emotional pressure is enormous, because one mistake could mean burying the wrong remains with the wrong family. This isn't just a criminal case anymore. It's a massive restoration process. Trying to restore dignity to people whose graves were violated. And investigators still believe Jonathan robbed far more than 30 graves, which means there may be additional cemeteries, additional victims, additional remains still undiscovered. Final takeaway: the dark side people don't see. I think what makes this case so haunting isn't just the skeletons, it's what the case reveals about hidden human behavior. Because most people assume the darkest crimes happen in secret underground worlds, completely disconnected from ordinary life. But increasingly, that's not true. The internet has erased the distance between disturbing interests and public spaces. Things that once existed only in hidden criminal circles can now form communities online. Share information, normalize each other, create marketplaces. For me personally, That may be the creepiest part of this entire story. Not Jonathan himself, but the realization that there were buyers, communities, people casually participating, and most of them probably look completely normal. That idea unsettles people because it destroys the comforting belief that evil is easy to recognize. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it smiles at neighbors, helps during emergencies, acts polite, then spends Christmas Eve stealing bones from graves. And maybe that's the real horror underneath this case. Not just what Jonathan did, but how ordinary someone can appear while hiding something unimaginably dark underneath the surface.